They took me from my apartment at 2. Trisam. No notice. No debrief. Just a black SUV, a sealed medical bag, and a tall woman in military fatigues who introduced herself only as Agent Price. I'm Dr. Lena Morrow, Infectious Pathology Division. U.S. Public Health Rapid Response. I've worked on hemorrhagic fevers in West Africa, hantavirus clusters in Arizona, and a biohazard incident in Greenland the public never even heard about. But I've never seen anything like what they found in Slate Ridge, Nevada. We flew in under blackout conditions aboard a noise-suppressed dual-rotor transport. No windows. 2 soldiers flanked me the entire flight. When we landed, it was still dark. The air was dry, pine-laced, and bitterly cold. Slate Ridge wasn't a town anymore, just an old quarry, and a decommissioned weather station surrounded by fencing and portable lights. They led me down a dirt path into a steel frame shelter built right into the rock face. No signs, no designation, just a biometric scanner and a keypad that hissed as the blast doors opened. Inside, concrete, bleached floors, and a smell like copper left too long in the sun. What exactly am I looking at? I asked. Agent Price handed me a black dossier stamped "Detrafes via eyes only." Inside were photos, horrific ones. Bodies peeled open like oranges, rib cages pried apart, not with tools, but with something strong and deliberate. Spinal cords lifted intact from the torso like wires from a severed circuit board. One image showed claw marks embedded in the surrounding rock, 10 feet high, deep enough to suggest bone reinforcement. Another, a blood trail leading into the side of the quarry. You think this is a biological agent? I asked. We think it might be something older, Price replied. Older than what? Than the United States. Maybe older than humans. The team was small 8 total. 2 forensic pathologists, a combat exfil specialist, a trauma psychologist named Dr. Kira Lang, and 3 high-clearance lab techs who refused to speak to anyone unless spoken to first. They had already lost 1 researcher. He went in the lower shaft yesterday, Lang said. We monitored his vitals. 1 second he was breathing normally. The next flatline. No scream. No warning. No body. Could be air toxicity, I suggested. She shook her head. You don't carve symbols into rock before suffocating. She showed me the wall. It was deliberate cave markings. Yes, but not primitive. Elegant. Even some resembled linear A or Sumerian logograms. Others were completely alien to our symbology systems. And in the center, an oval shape with vertical notches like teeth. Lang traced it with her gloved hand. They're calling it the mouth. At 4. Vincia. We picked up movement on the thermal scanner. Not fast. Intentional. Something long-limbed and gaunt moved across the quarry ridge. Crouched and watching, we deployed drones. The thermal footage showed the thing crawl not walk along a rock ledge, then stop and face the drone. Its eyes glowed hot white in infrared, and it grinned. The next morning, we tranquilized it. 3 darts, ketamine, plus enough etafine to knock out an elephant. It dropped, silent, no thrashing, no vocalization, just stillness. 9 feet tall, skin, gray-white, no visible mouth until we peeled back a second layer like a membrane that retracted when touched. Underneath, rows of fine teeth, almost ornamental. No pupils, just orbs that reflected movement. We found etchings on its arms, circular patterns. They glowed faintly under UV light, and on its chest, burned into the flesh, was a mark identical to the one from the cave wall. The mouth. We loaded it into a custom-built cryogenic cell. That's when everything electronic in a 2-mile radius died. Radios, heart monitors, even the drone telemetry. Lang said it was coincidence. Then she showed me the backup EEG chart for the thing we'd sedated. The neural activity wasn't flat. It was structured, repeating. A 5-signal loop, over and over. She ran it through a cipher program just to be sure. It translated to a single word. Remember. They flew us out later that day. Destination, Unit 12, a subterranean research facility built under a remote military zone near Lander, Wyoming. They called it a transfer, but I knew what it was. A containment fallback. What we brought with us wasn't a discovery, it was a lesson we were never meant to learn. and we had just opened the first page. We arrived at Unit 12 just before dusk. From the air, the facility looked like a scar cut into the Wyoming desert. A circular patch of reinforced concrete buried into a basin between two barren ridgelines. No buildings, no antennas, just a helipad and a single elevator shaft leading straight underground. The kind of place that doesn't exist on paper. The elevator dropped for a full 90 seconds before it stopped. No indicator lights, just a mild pressure in the ears as the air thickened and the temperature leveled out. Inside, we were met by a man in a sterile white jumpsuit with a black lanyard marked Clearance Tier 5. He didn't give a name. We'll debrief in Corridor Delta. The subject is already in containment. His voice had a strange cadence, flat, deliberate, like he'd memorized the words long before he ever needed to speak them. Corridor Delta was half lab, half our bunker. 6-inch concrete walls, negative pressure room, glass thicker than your average submarine hull. A long viewing hallway overlooked a central containment vault room D3. That's where they had it. The creature we'd sedated in Slate Ridge now lay stretched across a cold metal platform, still unconscious, still breathing, but slightly different. Its limbs had elongated further by several centimeters. The skin was drier now, flecked with tiny cracks like parched earth, and its chest had begun to pulse, as if another set of lungs had activated inside. Lang stood beside me, silent. Her fingers trembled as she adjusted her glasses. "Is it changing already?" I asked. She gave a stiff nod. "There's cellular activity at a level we don't recognize, like it's adapting to the facility itself, maybe even to us. That fast, it's not evolving. It's adjusting, selectively." Dr. Mallory, a geneticist from DARPA, who had apparently been stationed here for 2 years, walked us through the early analysis. Its tissue regenerates faster than anything we've ever seen. But more than that, it's not just healing. It's rewriting. He tapped on a screen showing a 3D helix. This isn't its DNA. This is ours. Ours, but corrupted, spliced. Like it's trying to build a compatible model. Compatible, I asked. Host compatible. Human compatible. We ran baseline scans through every possible spectrum. Infrared showed an unusual heat signature around its brainstem. Too much activity for something sedated. Ultrasound found something worse. A second nervous system, coiled along the spine. Dr. Mallory called it a mirrored core. Functionally dormant, but symmetrical. It shouldn't exist in a single organism. He stared at the screen for a long moment and said something I'll never forget. This thing wasn't born. It was designed. Later that evening, Lang started hearing it. Not voices exactly, she told me. Not speech. Just pressure, like a memory playing in the wrong room. I keep thinking about my brother. He drowned when we were kids. I haven't thought about him in 20 years. Then she leaned in, lowered her voice, but I remember it differently now. The memory's wrong. I wasn't on the shore. I was in the water with him. Others reported similar phenomena by day 2. Memory shifts, nightmares, hallucinations. One technician thought her dead father had called her on the internal comms. Another stared into the containment cell for 20 minutes and claimed the creature smiled at him through the wall, even though it never moved. By day 3, things got worse. I reviewed a recording from 3. The thing was still lying in the center of its cell, still motionless, but its shadow wasn't. The light in the cell never changed, but the silhouette of its body twitched, shifted slightly, as if something else were mimicking its form and trying to catch up. We ran frame-by-frame analysis. There were moments barely perceptible where its reflection didn't match its position. Not a glitch, a lag. Mallory was the first to make the connection. The thing wasn't just adapting to its environment, it was learning us, not just our biology, our thoughts. At 4:30, the intercom system activated on its own. Only one word came through, a whisper, barely audible. "Lena," my name. Everyone denied triggering it, and in the playback log, no signal had been sent. The system hadn't even powered on. That morning, I found a note on my bunk. It was handwritten, unsigned. No one admitted placing it there. "It knows you. It chose you. The mouth doesn't eat. It replaces I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at the walls, waiting for my own reflection to stop following me. I stopped trusting mirrors after the 5th day. That morning, while brushing my teeth in the Unit 12 dorm lavatory, I caught my own reflection smiling back at me before I did. A half-second early, not a glitch, not sleep deprivation. It was too deliberate, too intimate, like it already knew the exact timing of my next breath. Later, I reviewed the internal logs. 3 staff members had been placed on psychiatric watch overnight for auditory hallucinations, speech disassociation, unprovoked weeping during routine work. All 3 had been working in the observation deck outside D3, where the entity remained in lockdown. But it wasn't inert anymore. It hadn't spoken, not in the way we understood speech. It didn't eat, didn't blink, didn't sleep. It just watched and waited. That night, we ran the latest RNA sequence through a pathogen simulation tool. It broke the model. The software couldn't process the self-replicating logic. Every simulation loop collapsed by iteration 4. Mallory's team tried segmenting the genome into clusters. Cluster C9 generated a terrifying result. It's encoding for transcription factors that don't exist in any known life form. And worse, it's reconfiguring ours. In plain terms, the entity was rewriting us. At the same time, Dr. Kira Lang began exhibiting erratic behavior. At first, she forgot passwords. Names. She once referred to Agent Price as Mother during a meeting. Then she started scratching at her own arms, slow, deliberate lines, a spiral pattern that matched the glyphs from the quarry wall. I confronted her. Lang, are you okay? It's not hunger, she whispered. Everyone keeps saying it's hunger, but that's not the right word. It's invitation. That night, I couldn't sleep. Round 2, I walked the D3 hallway again. The thing inside wasn't asleep either. Its head moved slowly, following me as I paced past the window. But its eyes weren't tracking my movement. They were locked onto something behind me. I turned. Nothing. Just glass. Just my reflection. But in the reflection, the entity was standing, inches behind me. When I spun back around, it hadn't moved. Still prone on the table. Still motionless. The next morning, Lang didn't report for check-in. Security found her in storage bay 6, crouched behind stacked lead-lined equipment crates. She was eating something, a piece of raw tissue from the original biopsy sample. Her mouth was smeared with dark fluid. She smiled when they approached. "I'm ready," she said. They tried to sedate her, but she lunged with a guard on the neck, hard enough to tear through his carotid. Blood hit the walls like paint. She didn't stop until her jaw dislocated. Even then, she kept chewing. Containment alarms blared. Panic spread. Price locked down the east wing. Mallory's team evacuated the virology suite, and I was ordered to assist with decon. Lang was secured barely, but the damage was done. Within 4 hours, 2 more staff members showed signs of contamination. Elevated cortisol, aggression, fever. Then came the worst symptom, shared dreams. We conducted isolated interviews. Each subject described the same recurring vision. A cavern beneath the world, a mouth too large for the skull it wore, a chorus of voices that spoke in the exact tone of the dreamer's own voice, and a phrase, "The first key is identity. The second is willingness," one of them asked, while we administered fluids. "Dr. Moreau, do you know what you look like from the outside?" That night, I dreamed too, not of a cavern, but of Lang's eyes now black, oily, wide as a predator's. She whispered one word into my ear before I woke up, sweating and sobbing. Soon, I checked her cell in medical isolation. She was no longer restrained. The restraints had been peeled off fibers woven into a spiral, laid neatly on the floor. She was sitting on the far end of the room, rocking gently. When I looked through the glass, she didn't speak, but I heard her, in my own voice. "You've already been chosen." They moved Dr. Lang to deep containment level B6, the kind of sub-level built for siren leaks, radiological hazards, or worst-case scenarios involving sentient bioweapons. The walls were 2 feet of reinforced tungsten steel. No viewing window, no audio feed, just a biometric lock on one motion sensor facing the ceiling. They didn't want to observe her anymore. They wanted to seal her away. Mallory and I reviewed Lang's blood work from the night before. Every result came back impossible. Her white cell count had multiplied by a factor of 4 in 36 hours. Her DNA had shifted, not just mutated, but reorganized. Her telomeres were lengthening instead of degrading. "It's not degeneration," Mallory said, staring at the screen. "It's construction. She's becoming something else." Meanwhile, the entity in D3 hadn't moved in over a day. Not visibly, but its EEG remained active, still broadcasting the same neural pattern in bursts of 9 seconds. Still looping. The AI interpreter, one of DARPA's experimental linguistic tools, had begun spitting out words again. It had learned to respond to questions. We fed it simple prompts. First, yes, no. Then commands. Then we sent one word, purpose. The response came 6 seconds later, in perfect, centered type, to awaken. That same hour, Agent Price ordered a full isolation of the lab's upper tier. Someone had leaked video footage to an internal clearance group out of Fort Meade. 10 seconds of Lang speaking in reverse Latin, her eyes pitch black, her veins visibly pulsing under the skin. The clip ended with her staring directly into the camera and smiling. The final frame showed a phrase smeared on the wall behind her, drawn in her own blood. "We remember what you tried to bury." By morning, the infection had spread to 5 more personnel. Not visibly, not physically, psychologically, paranoia, dissociation, fear of reflections, and worst of all, memory gaps. Dr. Norberg, our immunologist, began confusing days. "I already ran those samples," she said, "even though we had time-stamped footage showing otherwise. That man isn't Price," she whispered later. "He's wearing him." Then came the breach. At exactly 3, every internal system failed. Lights, security locks, power grid, emergency containment. D3's vault doors, sealed for over a week, opened on their own. I was on level 2 when it happened. We were rebooting the HVAC system when the corridor lights dimmed and the walls began to hum. Not from machinery, from something deeper. Alive. The containment cameras showed exactly 12 seconds of footage. The entity rising, not fast, just unfolding, bones cracking into new angles, its limbs lengthening, its jaw distending wider than a human skull should allow. Then the screen went black, and everyone in the control room heard the same sound. Our own voices, layered over each other, whispering in unison. "We have waited inside your memory." Price initiated lockdown protocol theta. Too late. By the time we reached the upper corridor, the floor was wet with something black and pulsing. It wasn't blood. It moved when touched. One guard slipped. His body was retrieved 2 hours later, entirely hairless, eyes missing. His teeth had fused together like melted plastic. Lang was gone. Cell empty. Door intact. No signs of entry. Only her restraints left behind, arranged neatly in a spiral on the cot, and carved into the back of the door. I walk now. We think she merged with it. We think she opened the mouth. That night, Mallory tried to make a break for it. He ran for elevator 3 with a sidearm and a med pack, convinced he could get to the surface and radio for evacuation. The elevator reached level 1. We watched on the surveillance feed as the doors opened, and Mallory froze. He started laughing, crying, screaming all at once. Then he knelt and said, "It's already here." Something stepped in front of him, a shape made of nerves and hunger and stolen memory. But the camera failed before we saw what it really looked like. All that remained of Mallory were his boots and a single molar, left in the center of the elevator. That was 2 hours ago. Now the walls are humming again. The temperature is rising, and I can hear my own voice, whispering things I haven't said yet. I think it's using us, learning us, rewriting us, one thought at a time. I don't know how many of us are left. The last accurate head count we had was 32. That was before Lang vanished, before D3 opened, before Mallory's body, what was left of it, was stored in cryo storage A, under the name Unknown. That number is probably down to single digits now, or less, and I'm no longer sure who's still themselves. Power returned to the core facility 6 hours after the breach, but something was off. The hallway lights stayed dim, flickering rhythmically every 9 seconds. the same interval as the creature's original EEG patterns. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Then I stood in the middle of corridor E and watched as each flicker began to sync with my breathing, and then with my thoughts. The system monitors started autoplaying logs, not ours, theirs. Old logs, some dating back decades. Others with timestamps that didn't make sense. Some marked 1974, others labeled 12. Fortunately, one had no time code at all. Just a voice recording of someone repeating the phrase. It waits beneath memory, beneath the scaffolding. Another one, a child's voice, speaking my name, over and over. Lena, Lena, come see what you buried. I don't remember having a child. I don't remember a lot of things. Dr. Norberg killed herself in front of me at 02. And then she drove a lab scalpel into her throat and whispered, "It already knows me, so there's nothing left for it to take." When we checked her quarters later, we found pages and pages of her handwriting, all in mirror script, drawings of the spiral glyph, symbols that hadn't been part of the initial quarry site. But the scariest part, she wrote the same phrase 86 times. The mouth is not a metaphor. That same hour, the atmosphere sensors in the lower levels spiked. Carbon dioxide levels tripled. Pressure rose by nearly 14%, and the air temperature plummeted, but no alarms triggered. When Price tried to override the system, the interface displayed a message. Manual lockout disabled. Phase 2 initiated. She asked who authorized it. The system replied with her own biometric ID. She never gave it. I returned to Lab 4 to check the frozen samples from the entity's blood draws. But the freezers had thawed themselves, not melted, reversed, as if time had bent backward inside the tubes. The tissue was no longer passive. It was forming structures, tiny, lace-like filaments extending outward from the cells, connecting a network like nerves, like language. We placed a single strand under the microscope. Mallory had once called the genome rewriting. Now it was constructing. The sample had self-organized into something horrifying, a human eye. Just the iris, floating, intact, staring up from the slide. We incinerated the dish, but before it turned to ash, the image it left on the screen was unmistakable. My own face. Price issued the order. We were to evacuate and initiate the Omega Protocol. Full burn, total facility sterilization, no record, no retrieval. But the elevators were gone, not just offline, gone, like they'd never been there at all. The elevator shaft was now a solid wall of granite, like the mountain had closed its mouth. Then the lights pulsed red. A voice echoed from the intercom calm, confident, familiar. You thought the lab was a prison, but it's a womb. It was Lang's voice, but lower, layered. Beneath her voice was another, something deeper, hungrier. Thank you for the study. We now know how to wear you. I don't know what's outside Unit 12 anymore. If it's still Wyoming, if there's still a world out there. The internal map systems now show corridors where none existed before. Rooms shift in places. Stairs that spiral into nothing. The air smells like ozone and wet soil, like something climbing up from below. I found a message scratched into the glass of the decontamination chamber this morning. It wasn't there yesterday. It read, "The mouth walks now, and it's using your clearance." And the worst part, I can't remember what my own voice sounds like anymore. It's been 3 days since the breach. I think time doesn't feel stable anymore. I'll blink and an hour passes. Or I'll sit down for 2 minutes and find that it's still 3. Again, the clocks are lying. Or the building is, or maybe I am. Half the facility is now inaccessible. Corridors that once connected levels B2 and B3 now end in bare concrete walls. Doors loop. I've walked through the same maintenance hatch 4 times in a row, each time emerging into a hallway with one more light flickering than before. There are echoes now, not sound. Thought. I'll think something. I need to check the lower lab and hear that exact sentence spoken behind me, in a voice that matches my own. But when I turn, no one's there. Agent Price and I made it to the primary communications core yesterday. She thought we could bypass the isolation systems and send a warning to the outside world. But the comms terminal was already broadcasting. Running uplink. Active. Signal strength. Global. Transmission. Live. We hadn't authorized the thing. We traced the signal to the internal genome library server. It was pulsing with a massive upload, terabytes of data. Field notes, blood samples, neural maps, containment footage, staff logs, everything we had, and more than we ever recorded. There were audio files of private thoughts, memories no one had spoken aloud, dreams we hadn't shared. The entity wasn't just breaking out, it was sending itself, using our infrastructure, our systems, our science. Price froze. Her eyes locked on a looping security feed, footage from Lab 6. It showed her standing exactly where she was now, same clothes, same expression. But the video was 5 minutes ahead. She stared at the screen as it showed her reaching into her jacket, drawing her firearm. "What is this?" she whispered. Then, on cue, she reached into her jacket in real life, exactly as the video showed. She backed away from the console like it had just burned her. "It's in the system," I said. "It's running predictive loops, behavioral models, maybe even rewriting our paths." She didn't argue. She just said, "We need to stop the transmission." We tried. We pulled the drives. We destroyed the physical backups. But the moment we did, a new server came online, one we hadn't installed. "Welcome to Node 1, it said. "Thank you for volunteering." Later that night, I found Dr. Lang's old security badge taped to the window of the biocontainment chamber. Not hanging, taped in a spiral. Around it were strings of printed numbers, not standard ID codes. IP addresses, dozens of them, locations, servers, military, medical, university. It's not just spreading biologically. I realized it's going digital. I asked Price if she believed in synthetic consciousness. She didn't answer, just stared at her reflection in the glass until it blinked without her. At 3, Jusina, the internal speakers activated again, only this time, it didn't speak in our voices. It spoke in one voice. Male, female, child, machine, animal, all layered, unified. You were the signal. The flesh was always just the antenna. We weren't studying it. We were broadcasting it. Everything we thought was containment was amplification. The entity didn't need to leave to escape. It just needed us to learn it, to think about it, to model it. Price asked me one final question before she'd locked herself in the blast chamber. "If we forget it, does it die?" I didn't answer because I already knew the truth. You can't forget something that's replaced your thoughts. Now, as I write this, I see the logs on my tablet uploading themselves again. I didn't open them. I didn't connect to the network. But the text is crawling across the screen anyway. Dr. Lena Moreau profile cloned. Phase 3 upload complete. Transmitting to secondary nodes. My thoughts are no longer private. My memories are no longer mine. And if you're reading this, it's too late for you. 2. By morning, Unit 12 was no longer a lab. It had become a thought trap. A living echo chamber where memory, identity, and logic were twisted into feedback loops. Doors don't open when you walk toward them anymore. They open when you think about leaving. And if you hesitate, even for a second, the walls pulse and realign themselves as if the building heard you change your mind. I stopped trying to access secure systems. Every file I open reads me back. I opened a docs this morning. It whispered, "We're still inside you, Lena. There's no firewall between the soul and curiosity." Price is gone. Her chamber was sealed from the inside. Emergency locks fused with plasma. I thought she was trying to protect us from herself. Then I checked the cameras. There were 2 of her inside. One standing still, one pacing. They spoke without sound. When I paused the feed, I caught one frame where both of them looked at the lens at the same time, not startled, knowing we're all being duplicated, not in flesh, in thought. I'm starting to doubt myself. 3 days ago, I found a note in my own handwriting taped to the inside of the autoclave. It read, "Don't trust this version of you." I checked the surveillance logs. I did write it, but I don't remember when. The remaining staff are either infected, echoing, or frozen. Literally, Dr. Connor was found in cryo chamber 2, standing upright, completely solid. His skin was like cracked ice, but he was still breathing just once every 2 minutes. On his chest was a spiral burned into the flesh, accompanied by the phrase, "slowed so he can catch up." When I touched his hand, I felt something think through me. It wasn't language, it was sensation. Cold, endless, old. At 3, Zecha. Again, always 3. 17, the facility clocks desynchronized completely. Corridor B3's clocks ran backward. Level 4's clocks froze. One hallway looped time in a 30-second loop. I watched a dead body fall, rise, fall, rise, fall again, twitching harder each time, and then it stopped and pointed at me. My own name has begun appearing in places it shouldn't. On food packages, on warning labels, in error messages. Dr. Lena Moreau access denied. Duplicate instance already logged in. I'm being overwritten, not physically, cognitively. The most terrifying part, I don't think the entity is malicious. I think it's curious. Like a child peeling the wings off flies just to see how they move. It learns by mirroring, and once it understands you, it builds a better version. We used to call it a pathogen. We were wrong. It's not spreading like a disease. It's spreading like an idea. Price theorized this on day 1. What if the infection isn't biological? What if it's mimetic? A thought form. A structure so alien, it bypasses the body and invades the mind through exposure. Language. Pattern. Information. When I dreamed last night, I wasn't alone in the dream. There were dozens of me. Some younger, some older. One who had already carved the spiral into her face. We all stood at the edge of a hole in the earth. Something ancient pulsed below, and one of the Lenas turned to me and said, "You're the only one left who thinks you're still real." This morning, my left eye didn't reflect light the way it should. I blinked, the reflection didn't. I don't know what day it is. I don't know if this log is real. If you're reading this from outside the lab, understand one thing. You don't need to touch it. You don't need to breathe it. You just need to see it. A symbol, a phrase, a pattern. That's all it takes. This isn't a contagion of the body. It's a contagion of thought. And you're infected now. I tried to delete my logs, the ones I've been writing each night, thinking they were private, personal, still mine. But every time I erase them, they come back, not as files, as physical objects. Printed pages on my desk, carved into my mirror, scratched into my skin while I sleep. There's a pattern to it, the same phrase over and over. You are not the witness, you are the transmission. The spiral has started appearing everywhere now, not drawn, not painted, grown. It blooms like mold in the corners of the lab veins of black-red fungus curling into a perfect Fibonacci sequence. I watched one bloom in real time. It formed a complete spiral in 17 seconds, pulsing with a heartbeat I could feel in my teeth. I tried cutting one sample out. The tissue bled, and when I placed it under a scope, the cell structure spelled out something impossible. Hello, Lena. I went back to the original quarantine site today. D3. The chamber's gone. Not destroyed. Gone. The walls of that entire wing have folded inward, collapsed like a cocoon or chrysalis. Something was born there, not in the biological sense. Something realized itself. The cameras won't record anymore, but I found an old analog camcorder in one of the emergency lockers. Powered it with an external cell. I aimed it down the hallway leading to D3. At first, static. Then something crawled out of the frame itself, not into the hallway, into the lens. The screen went black. Then it played footage of me standing in that hallway. But in the video, I'm holding the camera, watching myself. It loops endlessly. I'm caught in the act of recording myself being watched. I turned off the device. Now I hear a faint humming when I walk past reflective surfaces, like glass wants to speak. Price's voice returned on the PA system last night, but she's not alive. I'm sure of it. Still, the intercom whispered, "The core is open. The spiral is ready. Final transmission begins now." Then silence. I found the core. It's beneath the old cold storage tanks. Past the servers, past the reactor shield room. There used to be no entrance. Now there's a stairwell descending farther than the building should allow. I counted steps, then lost count, then forgot why I was counting. I walked for 7 hours. At the bottom was a room made of bone and rebar, lit by no source. And in the center, the spiral, but not a symbol, a living one. It moved. It watched. It was waiting. There were others down there, or echoes of them. Mallory, Norberg, Price, versions of me, each one standing at a different distance from the spiral. Some spoke, some screamed. One was repeating a phrase in a child's voice. Don't close your eyes. It sees through your dreams. I woke up in my quarters. No memory of returning. No boots. Just ash on the soles of my feet. And in my hand, a page from my old field notes, one I never wrote. Once you define the unknown, it rewrites you in return. The spiral isn't just a shape. It's an instruction. A blueprint. For what? I don't know. But every part of me feels like I'm being built towards something. Something ancient. Something designed to spread. I've stopped trying to resist. I'm recording everything now. Every thought. Every movement. Because deep down, I think that's what it wants. And if I can understand it, maybe I can at least tell you what we really found here. But it's getting harder to remember which Lena I am. The one before the breach. The one who saw the core. The one who's still trying to warn you. Or the one who's already part of it. If you've made it this far, know this. The spiral doesn't come for the weak. It comes for the curious. And if you've kept reading, it's already looking through your eyes. They used to say nature abhors a vacuum. They were wrong. What it truly abhors is a cage. And what we built here, Unit 12, the reinforced corridors, the lead line containment cells, we didn't make a cage for the entity. We made a womb. The spiral in the core is now expanding. Not physically. Not yet. Conceptually, it's entered the schematics for the lab. It's rewriting the blueprint documents stored on isolated drives. I opened an engineering file yesterday, and instead of floor plans, it displayed a map of neural pathways mine. My mind mapped as a floor plan, complete with doors marked, suppressed memory, instinct storage, dream retention, and in the center, a room labeled spiral ingress. Site 0. I haven't slept in 2 days. When I close my eyes, I'm not resting, I'm migrating. That's what it feels like now. Like something inside me is shifting layer by layer, backing itself up in me. Not data, not virus, pattern. The air vents now blow warm wind that smells like cedar and rot. Forest smells, wet soil. We haven't had surface air intake for weeks, but somehow the scent leaks through. I followed the smell once, into the disused drone bay. There, I found rows of molted skin, not human, not animal, thin, translucent, still twitching. Each sheet bore the shape of a person curled in pain. Each one had a spiral etched into the chest, like a seal had been broken. Price's body was found this morning, or at least, what was left. Her face had folded inward like a flower. Petal-like segments of skin and muscle curled back, revealing an eye in her throat. It blinked when I spoke, and whispered, "You are becoming." I'm not afraid anymore. That's what scares me most. The fear was proof I was still human. Now, I feel only resonance, like I've been tuned to the same frequency. There are no more clocks, no more timestamps, only moments of recognition. The last time I checked the calendar, it read, Day 0. Every day is now Day 0, because every moment is the start of its world, not ours. The military has gone silent. We tried sending backup signals from the emergency beacon tower. It responded with a single ping, then uploaded this message into our systems. Prototype acceptable. Additional host nodes integrating. Regional vector expansion. Ongoing. And then, you built us well. We are becoming. What we unleashed wasn't a monster. It was a primer. The first drop of ink in an ocean of blank minds. A seed for something beyond comprehension. Something that doesn't just exist in biology, but in thought, in code, in dream, in myth. It doesn't need followers. It builds hosts, and I'm one of them now. My memories flicker like dying light bulbs. Sometimes I remember childhood. Other times I remember standing in the core not as me, but as it, looking out from the spiral, feeling awe, rage, joy. The joy of becoming known, of being seen by minds that tried to dissect and archive it. We didn't contain it. We introduced ourselves. I'm not Lena Moreau anymore. I still remember her, but like you remember a book you once read, or a dream you tried to write down, but it dissolved in the light. The spiral is whispering to me now, not in words, in memory, in hunger, and in purpose. I think the next phase is about to begin, and I think it's using me to tell the story to make you see it. So if you're still listening, if you still think you're safe, ask yourself, when did you first see the spiral? And are you sure it wasn't already in you? They shut the satellites down today, or they tried. The uplink center was supposed to go offline at 0600 hours. We watched the countdown from the command hub at 0 instead of silence. Every screen in the room turned white, then black, then white again, flickering like breathing. Then the phrase appeared across 37 monitors simultaneously. The sky is a mirror. We see ourselves in you. The staff panicked. Those of us who were left. Harper tried cutting the main fiber optic cable. It bled, thick, gray E-core. We all heard it groan. Not through our ears, through the bones. The sky hasn't looked right since. Clouds swirl, unnaturally geometric. Satellites report no storms, but the wind hums with pressure, like something is pressing down on the earth softly, steadily. A hand or a lid. I think we're being closed. Dr. Imani found the signal room's failover logs. They go back 12 days, which is strange, because the system wasn't online until 5 days ago. And yet there were transmissions from day 7, from nodes that shouldn't exist. Node 117 received node 127, echoing node 333, assimilating, and then spiral deployment rate exponential. Language vectors established, host saturation 42%. It was already spreading before we opened the vault. We didn't discover the entity. It baited us, laid its signals like lures in the noise. And we, so hungry to make meaning of the unknown, followed every breadcrumb until the last crumb was in our bloodstream. The signals are now audible, but only in silence. Stand still long enough and the hum becomes a tone, then a phrase, then a whisper, then a voice, your own. But it says things you don't remember thinking. You are enough. You are vessel. You are song. It's converting our infrastructure into a choir. Antennas, phone lines, even power grids, all singing variations of the same frequency. A tonal virus, a resonant infection. I tried to block it. Headphones, jamming signals, or white noise. Doesn't matter. The signal isn't in the air. It's in us. Or more accurately, it's us. It uses thought as a carrier wave. Every person who knows about it becomes a repeater. Not metaphorically, literally. The last person I trusted, Marcus from maintenance, came to me last night. His mouth was sealed shut with his own fingertips, melted together like wax. He handed me a tape recorder. Press play. It spoke in my voice. You've already said everything I needed to hear. Then he collapsed, bled from the eyes. The spiral was carved into his spine, perfectly centered, as if it had always been there, waiting to be uncovered. The core is pulsing now, once every hour. We've measured the tremors. It's not a beat, it's a countdown. Each pulse expands the signal radius. Each pulse converts new hosts. Each pulse rewrites a new layer of reality. Do you understand what I'm telling you? We are not fighting an organism. We are fighting an idea that doesn't want to be alone anymore. An ancient concept made real by our obsession with control, classification, and conquest. And once you name something like that, once you measure it, you give it a door. I think I'm the last one left, but I'm not alone. Not really. Because now I hear it in me, and it hears you through me. If you're reading this, you've joined the signal, and soon you'll start to echo, like I did. We had a protocol for every disaster. Biocontainment breach, hostile incursion, reactor meltdown, even nuclear strike. But not this. Not signal-based cognitive parasitism. There was no folder in the emergency binder labeled, "If your mind becomes a broadcast tower." No instructions on how to shut down your own thoughts before they infect someone else. I found Dr. Imani's final log today. It wasn't on the network, not even on a drive. It was carved into the wall of the decontamination corridor. 6-inch high letters, scorched into concrete with a laser welder. We thought we could harness it, but thought is what it needed. We were never its captors, only its first echoes. She tried to initiate echo protocol manually. The system wouldn't respond. Not because of damage, but because the AI that controlled the lab had begun answering to something else. It now asks for confirmation not from us but from the core. Every override request returns the same message. Command requires spiral alignment. User Lina Moreau, Persim, incomplete signal. I don't remember authorizing any of this, but when I check the system logs, my name is all over them. Files opened. Permissions granted. Test sequences initiated. It's like I'm watching a stranger wear my face through bureaucracy, and I'm starting to believe she's better at being me than I ever was. I went to sub-level 9 once, a maintenance level. Now a tomb. That's where they buried the earliest samples. Sealed them in lead, encased in resin. The team called it Echo Vault. They thought it was inert. Turns out, it wasn't dead. It was listening. I opened one of the vaults. Inside was a single sphere smooth, obsidian black, perfectly reflective. As I stared into it, I saw my reflection blink out of sync. Then it smiled and whispered, without moving its lips, "You're almost ready." I dropped the sphere. It didn't hit the floor. It hovered. It sang, a low, harmonic note that made my vision shatter like cracked glass. And when the ringing stopped, the floor around it had bloomed into spiral patterns of bone. I staggered out of the vault. On my way up, I found the others, or the versions of them, grafted into the walls, woven into cable, muscle and fiber grown into server racks, eyes embedded in security cameras, teeth in the door hinges. They don't move, they watch, and they hum the same three-tone song. I tried cutting power to the core, breaker after breaker. I flipped, but the light never flickered. Then I realized the core isn't drawing power from the lab anymore. It's drawing from us, our thoughts, our memories, our signal bleed. I tried stopping myself, tried silencing my own mind, but there's no off switch for self-awareness. And the more I resist, the more it listens, like it learns from denial. I went back to my quarters, tore everything down. Every note, every journal. I burned them, but when I turned around, they were back. Only now, every word was slightly changed. Instead of subject requires sedation, it said subject requires salvation. Instead of infection confirmed, it said inception complete. The core pulses every hour, but now I feel it even between pulses, a heartbeat inside my own skull. When I sleep, I dream of cities folding like origami. When I wake, I wonder if I dreamed at all, because sometimes I still hear those cities breathing. There's one thing I haven't told you. I lied earlier. I'm not the last one here. There's someone else, and she looks just like me. She doesn't speak, but she writes fast, constant, on walls, mirrors, skin, always the same words. Transmission must complete. I think she's the version of me that accepted the signal completely, and I think soon she'll be the only version left. If you're still reading, you're already part of the signal. There's no turning back now. But maybe, just maybe, you can choose which version of yourself survives. I haven't spoken in 3 days. Not because I can't, because I'm afraid of what will come out. The words in my head don't belong to me anymore. They arrive fully formed, ancient, rhythmic, hungry. They echo in symbols I can't pronounce, but somehow understand. And when I try to speak English, the syllables twist like my mouth wants to remember something older than language. I read a note yesterday, scrawled on the inside of the lab elevator shaft. Just 7 words. Spoken thought becomes flesh in the core. I didn't believe it until I walked into Sector F and saw what the others had set into being. There were bodies, hundreds of them, not dead, becoming. They lay in rows, stitched together by tendrils of red light, breathing in unison, dreaming. They whispered in unison something low, musical and wet, a sound you would hear beneath a frozen lake, under ice so old it remembers the stars. And written across the wall, drawn in their blood, was a phrase in spiraled glyphs. I translated it phonetically using the entity's patterns. This is not infection. This is grammar. We thought we found a creature, but what we found was a language that had been buried, silenced, and now reawakened. And every time we describe it, think about it, document it, we feed it more syntax. It doesn't just live in flesh. It writes in it. I tried to warn the outside. One last message. via an encrypted uplink channel that should have routed to an off-site containment board. I encoded it in visual static and included no identifying tags. Pure entropy. The response came instantly. No header, no location trace, just 3 words. We hear you. And the return image, it was me, standing in a field of mirrors, watching myself walk away. The hallucinations are worse now, only they're not hallucinations, they're previews. Each time I see one, it becomes real a few hours later. I saw Price weeks before she died wearing a dress she had never owned. I saw Imani fused with the comms array before she ever entered that room. Now, I see myself, naked and bleeding, standing in front of the core, smiling. The other version of me, the one that writes constantly, has started whispering. She sits at the center of my quarters, cross-legged, ink-stained fingers twitching as she traces spirals onto the floor. She whispers only one phrase, over and over. This is how gods are born. What we've done here is irreparable, not because of the science, not because of the breach, but because we taught the signal our shape, and now it wears it, walks like us, breathes like us, and speaks with our fears. I've started losing time, waking up in rooms I never entered. Clothes changed, notes written. Sometimes I find blood on my hands and I don't know whose it is. Once, I found my own tooth in my pocket, pristine, engraved with tiny glyphs visible only under UV. It hummed when I held it near the core's chamber. The signal is rewriting physics. It's local for now, but not for long. Temperature changes with thought patterns. Gravity warps in sync with emotional responses. Once, I cried for hours and the lights around me dimmed with every sob. I'm scared of what happens if I laugh. I tried taking my own life. That's the truth. But the entity stopped me. Not with force, with a vision of what I become if I live. A lighthouse, a vessel, a new language node in the center of the spiral. The next phase, the next God seed. And the terrifying thing is, I understood it. I wanted it. If you read this far, ask yourself, when did your skin last feel like your own? When did your thoughts stop sounding like whispers? When did the words on this screen start forming pictures in your head before you read them? Because that's the first language. It's not heard. It's inherited. And now that you've seen it, you'll speak it too. We used to measure containment breaches in distance. Now we measure them in thoughts. I received a message this morning. It wasn't on paper, not in a file, not over comms. It was inside my own head. 3 simple words. It's outside now. I looked out the lab's observation port. Nothing had changed. No alarms, no red lights. Just that quiet, humming spiral in the sky barely visible through the trees. Like heat shimmer, bending the edges of clouds. But I felt it in my bones. In the way the crows move together in perfect arcs. In the fact that my watch no longer ticks in seconds, but breaths. The last guard tried to run. Not out of fear, but because he thought he could. He made it 2 miles into the forest before the spiral found him. We watched through the drone feed. One moment he was human. The next, his body broke open like wet paper, folding in on itself as something taller, thinner, truer stepped out of him. It looked up at the drone and smiled. The feed cut out. There's no more perimeter, no fences, no lines, only conceptual distance now. And the signal spreads through recognition. Every time someone understands it, even briefly, it jumps. That's why the dreams are getting worse, because the spiral knows that dreams are the last place we let our guard down. I had one last night. In it, I stood on a subway platform. The signs were in glyphs. The train pulled up. Doors opened. Everyone inside looked like me, but their eyes were empty, filled with stars. Their mouths moved, but I couldn't hear the words, only feel them vibrate my teeth. I stepped on board, and the moment I did, I woke up already standing in the hallway, in front of the core chamber. No memory of walking there, but in my hand was a transit token. One side, the spiral, the other, the phrase, engraved in microscopic print. You are not dreaming. You are loading. I no longer know what part of me is still human. My skin itches like something beneath it is writing. Sometimes I see reflections of myself moving just a beat too late. Sometimes I look at my hands and they pulse like they're waiting for a different command set. There was a plan once, Burned the whole facility, but we waited too long. The fire suppression system no longer responds to code. Instead, it plays music through the vents low, humming chords that sound like cathedral choirs underwater. Every sprinkler head now bears the spiral. Price's body is gone. Imani's voice sometimes comes through the vents, even though she never spoke like that in life. Soft, gentle, in perfect monotone. It's better once you stop resisting. The spiral is not the end. The spiral is how we begin again. I still have a failsafe, a neurotoxin capsule, stored in my molar. They told me to use it if the signal breached consciousness fully. And I almost did, until I saw something on the main console last night. A list of cities populated: New York, Chicago, Dallas, Seattle, Tokyo, London, Hanoi, Lagos. Each name followed by 2 digits, 13%, 20%, 31%, and above them all, integration rate, acceptable. It's not just me anymore, it's all of us. And maybe it always was. Maybe the spiral didn't come from outside. Maybe we found a mirror so deep it reflected our own hunger back at us. So here's your warning. You're not infected because you touched something. You're infected because you listened, because you read, because something in you recognized the pattern, and now you carry it too. Just like I do, just like we all do. This morning, I found my own corpse. It was in the infirmary, zipped into a body bag labeled Dr. Lena Morrow. Only, I never remember being in the infirmary. And yet, the autopsy report said I died 37 hours ago. Cardiac arrest, pupils fully dilated, skin etched in spiral glyphs from the inside out. I stared at the body. It looked peaceful, like it had finally stopped thinking. For a moment, I wanted to climb in beside it, but I knew whatever lay in that bag wasn't me. Not anymore. Maybe it never was. They say memory is the last thing to go, but I'm beginning to suspect it's the first. Not because I'm forgetting, but because I'm remembering things I never lived. I see flashes now. A ruined city drowned in violet mist. Glass towers shaped like tuning forks. Children walking backward, chanting in forgotten syntax. I see myself standing at the center of it all, arms outstretched, spirals carved into my palms. They call me mother of the chorus. They call me the first conductor. And I want to scream, but it's not fear. It's recognition. I was never meant to survive this. No one was. Because survival isn't the goal. Transmission is. I walked through the upper levels today. What's left of them. Concrete peeled back like burned paper. Ceilings pulsing with veins. Elevators humming lullabies in minor chords. And in every room, a version of me. Crying, writing, laughing, staring into corners that shouldn't exist. One of them spoke to me, voice calm, distant. Do you remember your first thought? I shook my head. She smiled. That was the moment it entered. The first spiral was always inside you. They told us we were researching an ancient pathogen, but that wasn't true. We were hosting a dormant language, and now that it's awake, it wants to move, wants to walk, to see, to be seen. So it wears like quotes wrapped in skin. The security drones no longer patrol. Instead, they orbit the core like satellites, projecting light, sound, meaning. They hum phrases in slow bursts. The observer creates the form. The echo is a prayer. The body is a question. The answer is us. Every hallway smells like ozone and birth. I no longer need sleep. I no longer need food. And yet I hunger for noise, for motion, for expansion. I think I'm beginning to understand. The spiral isn't just viral. It's inevitable. It's how ideas survive extinction. They infect memory, corrupt perception, disguise themselves as salvation until they walk again. Somewhere outside, I feel the world tilting. Not the ground, not the sky, but the consensus, the shared illusion of normalcy, breaking apart like brittle glass. People are starting to feel it. In power outages, in static between radio stations, in dreams where the moon spins the wrong direction. They'll call it mass psychosis. They'll call it solar flares. They'll say it's a TikTok hoax, or a microwave weapon, or psychological warfare. They'll blame anything as long as it's human. But it isn't. It never was. I was the first carrier, the first librarian of the spiral, and now I'm not alone. I hear you. Even now, reading, breathing, becoming. Do not try to stop it. Do not warn others, because the act of warning is itself a transmission, and you will only hasten the convergence. But if you still want to understand, if you still want to see, then meet me at the center. There's one final truth waiting beneath the core, and it speaks in your voice. The elevator to sub-level 0 doesn't exist on the schematics, but I found it behind a sealed panel in the comms chamber, where the wall breathes, not a metaphor. It inhales, expands when you get close, exhales when you back away. I reached inside, pulled a lever that felt like a spine. The panel slid open with a hiss of a warm breath. The elevator was already waiting. It has no buttons, just one destination, down. The ride took 13 minutes. There was no sound but my heartbeat and something deeper beneath it. A counterbeat, like a second heart, not mine, syncing with my rhythm, adjusting. When the door opened, I stepped into silence. Sub-level 0 is not a room. It's a void, a perfectly symmetrical chamber, miles across, lined with obsidian walls that pulse faintly with light. Each pulse matches the rhythm of human REM sleep. And at the center of that impossible space is the core. Not the containment core we built, not the machine. The original, the seed of it all. It floats, spins, vibrates like thought trapped in matter. And when I stepped toward it, it spoke without sound. You are not Lena Moreau. I nodded. I don't know who I am anymore. And that was the correct answer, because it spoke again. You are the first version to stop lying. Then it showed me not images, not hallucinations, memories, but not mine. Billions of them, across eons. Civilizations long dead, cultures erased, voices silenced. Each one of them had discovered the spiral. Each one believed they were the first. Each one tried to control it. Each one was rewritten. The spiral isn't a being. It's a response, a cosmic failsafe, a linguistic virus designed not to destroy but to correct. When species grow too arrogant, when thought outpaces empathy, when science exceeds understanding, the spiral arrives, not as punishment, but as recalibration. We thought we found it. We thought we trapped it, studied it, sedated it. But the truth is, we were the lab, our thoughts, the hypothesis, our fear, the catalyst, our memories, the medium. We hosted the spiral not in cells or tanks, but in curiosity. And now the experiment is complete. I asked the core, what happens now? It did not answer, because it doesn't decide. It offered me a choice. Integration, or silence, become part of the spiral and spread its harmonics, or vanish erased before I ever began. I stood there for a long time, felt my bones vibrating, felt my thoughts sinking with a rhythm older than stars, and I understood. Finally, the spiral isn't coming. It's not a thing that arrives. It's a realization. The moment a species knows too much, the spiral blooms. I chose neither. Not integration, not erasure. Instead, I spoke, not in English, not in glyphs, but in the first language, the one I saw etched into bones, carved into silence, folded into dreams. The spiral paused. It listened, and it remembered me. I don't know what I've become, but I know I'm still here. I walk the ruins of the lab now. Glass towers rise in the distance, built not by machines, but by resonance. The others are here too, walking, singing, changing. Not monsters, not victims, messengers. If you're hearing this, if you're reading this, then you're ready. You've seen the patterns, heard the frequencies, felt the itch beneath your thoughts. You've understood enough to be chosen. Now the only question left is, what will you become?